Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. I hope that you're all having a pleasant day. I am JB, and joining me is the Riz King, the Rizzler, Mark Marsh.
Thank you for having me.
So, this is our Valentine's Day special, and it actually is going out on Valentine's Day. So, if you're enjoying your Valentine's Day with us, we are very honored. Um, this is actually very cute that this Wednesday is falling on a Valentine's
And if
Day.
you're celebrating Valentine's Day single, welcome to the club.
Now, I will apologize in advance for the nature of our last Valentine's episode because that was a ridiculous. I don't know what was happening there. That should have been cancelled in all honesty. Like, I don't know. We had ukuleles coming out. We had all sorts. And I didn't think that it was befitting of our show to have our Valentine's Day special essentially be two lads discussing
Age restricted video.
smut, filth, deviant behavior,
You gained a few new subscribers from that video.
NSFW. So we're going with a wholesome one. Why the relationship, the friendship between Shaggy and Scooby is the best in the franchise. Now, we're not talking about Shaggy and Scooby getting it on. It's not that type of video, but it's their friendship, their dynamic, their brotherhood. And I would argue that that is a relationship that has lasted the test of time in a way that, say, a Frapney has never really reached, because unlike that, this relationship doesn't get reset at the end of every story. It's more the same. So, Mark, Shaggy and Scooby as a double act, what about that pairing do you think is so iconic and has resonated with people?
I think it symbolizes true friendship. Like when you're best friends with someone for a long time, and you just have that, like so it's like my friendship with David and that we've been friends since primary school, so we've
Oh,
literally known each other the longest, and so we have a friendship where we can take things to the extreme because we know when the bar's set high or where the limit is. So we can mostly joke around with each other to the extreme where it would offend most people, but wouldn't offend. Like, he's party side, so I always take the mick out of his eyes of all the time. I did get in trouble with when one woman overheard me taking the mickey out of him when we were in town going to the cinema. I thought that was hilarious, and he started playing victim.
oh
But we know each
really?
other so
Jeez.
much, so it makes sense. But I think what Scooby-Doo and Shaggy have is something similar, like really close friendship where they can argue but still make up. You know, they can have a laugh and joke and support each other, whereas other people wouldn't really be that well. I wouldn't really act the same I do around day with other people because I haven't known them long enough. So it's like we just have a weird friendship where it's just like more extreme. Whereas
Hmm.
that's what I think Scooby and Shaggy have, where their friendship is more advanced when it is with the rest of the gang. Not saying they don't hate the rest of the gang, so that they don't really have the bro code, as I like to call it, with the rest of the
Yeah.
gang.
And I'm not a great fan of like situations where they've played off on that, where you've got, Fred and Shaggy, they were trying to walk together in something. I don't know if it's watching Scooby-Doo or a DTV, but then they were like, huh, this doesn't really work, does it? I do like the idea that they're all friends, to the point where they can talk to each other. A little bit like even in something that isn't very heralded, but a nice interaction that I can think of is just the scene in Mystery Begins when Shaggy is offering to take Fred to see Major League Eating. Just something like that I do quite like, but it is undeniable that Shaggy and Scooby are closer than the rest of the gang are to them, or they are to them. I think it's a good dynamic, and I think it also speaks to, I mean, I'll ask you this. Do you think it at all speaks to our general likening to dogs, the whole man's best friend trope?
I think it does as well, because I've got two dogs myself, and I'm always close with them. It just really bring the whole true like dog's a man's best friend. But also I think as well, Scoob's not a normal dog as well. He's more like a human in a sense. So he's more like he transcends a normal dog and master. He's more like a brother to Shaggy.
Yeah, see,
That
that's
type
a
of
good
level.
point. I think they did a really good job when coming up with Scooby, where they almost made him not so anthropomorphic, where he is speaking in full sentences and he is an extension of a human. I think almost what they did quite geniusly is they made him dog enough like to be a dog, but also able to communicate to the point where a kid could easily be watching that almost believes that they can hear their dog speaking in that way, or they can hear their own feelings reflected back to them. And it's almost like wish fulfillment in a way, like if you do have a dog that you do love. Then you would want to speak to them the way Shaggy speaks to Scooby, and the way Scooby can relay his thoughts to Shaggy. I think that is something quite brilliant that they did. Um, but also, like you did allude to at the start with your comparison, there have been some rocky roads with Shaggy and Scooby. Not many, but I guess let's take us back to some of the times that they've fallen out. Now, I guess really only think about a handful of times. One being when Shaggy didn't believe Scooby that Mary Jane
Oh
was a man in a
yeah,
mask. And because even then, like that's a testament. That whole movie, the
but
fact that the whole gang break up, but Shaggy and Scooby stay together.
you do know that when they do have that brief argument, that shows their true colors, where Scoob gets shut down the hole, and Shaggy's just like, "Shit, my best friend's in danger."
Yeah, and he doesn't hesitate. He's usually very scared, but in that sequence, he's just like, right, I need to jump down there and save
Because they're
Scooby.
both scaredy cats, but they have one thing in common: they always have each other's back, so they won't let anyone go anywhere on their own. And I think that's what the best duo is for, because if you look at all the series and that, they always get paired together, but they never once leave each other. They've
Mm.
always had each other's back, especially when they try to disguise themselves to fool the ghost. Even though they're terrified, they keep their composure and just be able to lure the perpetrator out of the room to question his existence, and then they run. The amount of times that they manage to like get away from the criminals is just insane.
Yeah, and they are utterly inseparable as well. Like for instance, like I said, when the gang broke up in the live action movie, it was Shaggy and Scooby that stayed together. In a similar instance, when the gang had all grown up and gone their separate ways in Zombie Island at the start of that one, you did have some pairings like Daphne and Fred, but ultimately you did as well have Shaggy and Scooby staying together. And then there were series Shaggy and Scooby-Doo Get a Clue. Not one that I've seen a whole lot of, but at the same time, like from what I remember, the rest of the gang were elsewhere, but you still did have Shaggy and Scooby being together in that.
Yeah, because they I think they kept the show as a whole. I feel like when they're not together, it's not the same. And even they do so well together, they had their own shows without the rest of the gang. They had Daphne there at some point, but it was mostly Shaggy, Scooby, and Scrappy. And then they had Daphne brought in, and it's mostly like that triangle circle, because they mostly are close with Daphne because they've had occasions where they work together. But I feel like they have more in common with each other. That's why they can do their own mysteries, like with Scooby-Doo and Scrappy-Doo, because
Mm.
it works. Because I think they proved a point where they removed them out of the factor and just had Scooby and Shaggy. It was like a test of like, will this still be appealing to the audience? And it does essentially, because when you do watch Scooby-Doo, the most characters you're drawn to are Shaggy and Scooby. Those will have more screen time, and those are the ones you're pretty much looking forward to, because they're the ones that always find trouble and always end up being solution to the problem,
Mm. And
either
also,
as bait
in a
or they
way,
might have come
Shaggy
across
is a little bit
information.
of an audience surrogate in that if you're watching it as a kid, you can relate to the fact that you would be scared of that monster or that monster, or you would like to have a snack at that point, or just that you would like to hang out with Scooby-Doo. Like, if you're not into dogs, if you don't like dogs, I don't know why you would watch Scooby-Doo. So you would assume that that audience are dog people. And so they could either relate to having a dog or wanting a dog. So Shaggy is very much your audience surrogate, for a lot of people. And so I think that's why his dynamic works a lot on his own. Whereas, again, like, I mean, the Velma series had the gang theoretically. The Daphne and Velma books had the rest of the gang. But let's say in a vacuum, I don't think you could get another member of the gang easily that could have their own series without anyone else, and it would be successful in the same way that a Shaggy and a Scooby would. I don't think. At least it
No,
wouldn't be very
it
easy.
wouldn't be as popular. They could probably do it, but it's like it won't be as plausible to the audience because they tried doing Velma and Daphne as a movie. I don't get me wrong, if it was a better budget or done correctly, it could have been something, but it just wasn't going to happen. Even with the Velma show, even though it's told Velma, you still have the other gang members
Yeah.
there. So it's like you're still hinting towards them because you need that kind of leeway to at least give you some credibility.
But I think too much. Like I think the way the Wednesday series was formatted, it was a bit better as far as justifying their title presence, given that you had some intro with everyone and then they were sprinkled into episodes, but ultimately it was a Wednesday story. Whereas in Velma, nothing about that was really a Velma story. If anything, it was more of a Fred story. You know, if you actually look at the whole narrative, it was more of a Fred story than a Velma story, which to me
It's-
is kind of wild.
They had the some good scenes, but I just feel like it's just like it just wasn't doing it right for me. I just feel like you're too prioritized in other stuff than actually the whole main topic of the story.
My guilty pleasure is Fred in that series. Like I could unironically
Oh my
watch a whole
God.
series of that Fred. Just such
They
an
they they,
idiot, but
they
like
made
a
him so
charismatic idiot.
unmasculine. It's like they took the leader and made him into like a useless person. I'm
Like
thinking,
I actually
why?
do like that version of Fred. Not like as in I'd want to be friends with him,
Especially,
but to watch him, I'm like,
yeah,
I okay.
it's that he has his moments, which is good.
And Norval, you just feel sorry for. It just isn't too much of a Velma story. Whereas actually, the Daphne and Velma book series, for all it does feature the rest of the gang, I do think it justifies being Daphne and Velma. I kind of just wish that we'd got a series based on the books, because it would have been better. Stuff that did need tweaking. Like there's some stuff that's in book two that I think could have been better set up in book one, but different authors between book one and two, so you can't really help that. But that's how I would, bridge that gap a bit better. But yeah, definitely so far you need Shaggy and Scooby. Now, here's my question. In that Daphne and Velma book series, and also other interpretations that have been a bit grittier, such as the Mystery Incorporated YouTube series, they've had Scooby-Doo be a normal dog, just a Great Dane. So, mm, how does that sit with you? Do you think a Shaggy and Scooby dynamic works if Scooby isn't a vessel to tell jokes or to speak to? Like, do you think it is
I
enough
feel
just
like
to have Shaggy and dog?
if it's just a dog, it's not gonna have the same kind of impact on the audience. I think when Scooby has his jokes and the ability to say certain phrases, it makes him his own independent character, and we can then communicate with the audience. So it's like he can do so much more. If it was just a normal dog, it's just gonna him acting like a normal dog, and like people aren't gonna look at him as a character, just some sort of like pet. So he starts more than a
Yeah.
pet because he speaks. And it wouldn't really feel the same when you see Shaggy and Scooby split up and then Scooby's just there, not talking like a normal dog. And then Shaggy's just, who's going to talk about? Because normally when I'm with my dog walking it, we don't really talk. That's the thing. But at least when Scooby talks back, he has something to say. So I feel like they need the talking dog. Otherwise, there is no show.
That's a good interpretation. I think definitely for a mainstream Scooby. definitely. But again, if Shaggy is our audience surrogate, I like the idea where you can relate to him if you are a dog person. I think that is still quite a good way to go. Now, this is kind of out of nowhere. Maybe we've already touched on it, but given the whole history of Scooby-Doo, is there one Shaggy and Scooby-Doo moment that really stands out to you as like why they are best friends, or just a moment that encompasses their friendship to you?
Oh god. There's a lot of certain stuff that happens that shows their, friendship or what makes them stand out. Because a lot of instances where they're in danger and either one of them saves the other and vice versa. It's like take Zombie Island, for instance, when they fall down the hole. Instead
Mm,
of one getting out and leaving the other, he comes back and grabs Scooby. That's pretty much a test of courage and friendship because normally he's out of the hole, he's out of danger already. He could leave the dog behind, but he doesn't. He risks his own life still to save Scooby and get the hell out of the hole. So it's like that's a still a good indication of a best friend.
yeah, definitely
But
someone
if
that
you take a
looks out
normal
for you.
friend, chances are they're just going to leave you.
Possibly. I like that dynamic a lot. And it's a good moment from a good movie. My one again, I always go back to this, but it's that sequence where Shaggy, played by Matthew Lillard, is speaking to Scooby, Neil Fanning, at the end, well, near the end of the live action movie, where he's trying to like convince him to not be a sacrifice anymore. Like it's like, oh, let's run out of here, like two, crazy people. Like I love that moment a lot. I always go back to that. To me, that's like a definitive moment. Also, shout out to Scoob, because for all the voices changed, I couldn't really relate to them too much. The way that they framed the sacrifice with Shaggy going into the other Cerberus world, I think was executed quite well. And also, this is one that probably not a lot of people will think of, but there is a song about Shaggy and Scooby's friendship in the Scooby-Doo Lost City of Gold soundtrack called We Share the Same Story. That is literally the friendship theme. Like that encompasses them perfectly. And so if we are celebrating Valentine's Day in a capacity with friendship and friends and platonic relationships, download that song. That is the best friend forever theme song. And I think that's awesome because obviously we did have our little jokes last episode about, getting it
What
on.
are you on? I never said anything.
Getting it on like Marvin Gaye. But this time we're celebrating pure, wholesome, platonic friendships, which I think is just such a special thing to celebrate on Valentine's Day because it isn't all just about the couples and the flowers and the chocolates. Like, just if you've got a homeboy, a homegirl, hit them up and you know, make a day of it. Like who knows? Who knows? Like that's my thing. That's why I wanted to highlight such a positive dynamic in Scooby. Because actually I think Scooby-Doo for a lot of people was probably their first double act, their first, on-screen friendship that they're witnessing. And I think it's quite a good one. I am dead. I actually am dead. Like I don't know.
I can feel it in your. I can hear it in your voice
Like my voice has been breaking all day.
because you have what I had back in Christmas time, so I know exactly how it feels, and it sucks. Because I guarantee you, tomorrow you're gonna feel even worse. Where you're not gonna be able to speak.
Jesus. I hope.
Because
Well, what day is it
I felt
tomorrow?
so cold
It's
and shivering.
Thursday.
Like I literally wrapped myself in a blanket and I was just there thinking I can't really do shit. I can't make any videos,
I
can't
need
record
to be
anything.
better by Friday because I'm going to
Oh
the
no.
Trafford Centre and I
Yep,
don't know.
you're probably gonna be worse.
I want to go to Build-A-Bear though.
It took me 2 weeks to fully recover. And then after I was actually recovered, it took me even more weeks to get over my bad throat.
Although, if we are on about getting it on, I do definitely need to be better for Valentine's Day because, like, you know what I mean. I need to do my thing. I need to do my move. So
You've taken all the medication, honey water and everything, but like, right,
yeah,
I'm good
them sips, just
I'm good
popping
for one
pills.
day.
Like,
You got me for an hour.
yeah,
Afterwards, dead on the floor.
yeah, just you know what I mean. Pit stop.
Pop the pills.
But yeah, that does it for today. We've got some very lovely Shaggy and Scooby moments. If you have a favorite Shaggy and Scooby moment, comment it down below. Also, let's spread the love, spread the cheer. If there is a family friendly, appropriate story that you can share about a good time that you've had with one of your friends, comment them down below because I think a lot of people would like to really spread that positivity because, Valentine's Day is for the boys as well, for the man there. So, Mark, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me over on my YouTube page at Mark Marsh, also on social media, on Twitter at IgosLuigi, Instagram at Mark Marsh94, and twitch.tv at IgosLuigi, where I'll
Ooh.
be streaming soon.
That is absolutely fantastic. You can find me dying somewhere. That's about it.
I'll do a Logan Paul and do a video.
I know it's Logan. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you do want to see more, then please like, comment, and subscribe. And have a happy Valentine's Day.
Take it.